Here, this is our first Discovering Round Rock history event for 2025, and we are so honored to have Elroy Haverway here as our speaker. I'll tell you more about him in just a minute. There are some people I want to introduce. First, let me tell you who I am. I'm Judy Anderson, and I am the president of Round Rock Preservation. And our board members are here. Kirsten Harding on the camera, Frank and Ann Dar at registration and technical issues. Who else is here? Our founder is here, Shirley Marquette, and Audrey Simmons, and she has a dual role. She's also on the Historic Preservation Commission, and then we have the chairwoman and vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission that are here, Pamela Anderson and Sharon Whitaker. Wait, Pamela, would you like to make a couple of remarks? This is lots of volume here.
Hi, y'all. I wasn't expecting to say anything today, but thank you to Round Rock Preservation for the opportunity to just welcome you all, and thank you for your support of our beautiful and historic city. A lot of people don't realize how, what the history is, and so to see this turnout today is really exciting to know that there are people out there that are interested in our history and want to share it. So when we learn, we'll share. So as Judy said, I'm the chair of the Round Rock Historic Preservation Commission. I've served for many years really kind of before when we were working with the Round Rock Preservation, even before on the preservation of the Stagecoach Inn. And so we'll continue to, educate the public and the property owners on preservation, restoration, and education of our beautiful and wonderful, deeply rooted history here in Round Rock. So I also wear another hat with the Texas Brazos Trail Region. It's one of 10 trail regions in Texas. I've spoken about that before at a lunch and learn. Hope they'll have me back sometime. Lots of new things, but there might be a couple of the copies of Authentic Texas out there. We have some articles that feature and showcase the Heritage Trail Bathing Beach restoration and development for the heritage of Round Rock. Katie Baker from the Round Rock Parks and Rec wrote that article. Judy has also written an article on the saving of the Stagecoach Inn. So we're always looking for content for publication that is distributed across the state, but also sold in Barnes & Noble, HEB. So it's a subscription quarterly magazine that's also sold outside of Texas, because everybody, even non-Texans, want to know about Texas history because it's very unique in our country. So glad to be here to listen to. I was telling our speaker today, when our oldest was in preschool, he was the pastor for the preschool program, and to see him today, I always look forward to his talks and the books that he's written, and so look forward to that today. And so thanks for letting me say a few words, and enjoy the program.
So let me just give you a couple of updates on Round Rock Preservation and what's going on with us. And I neglected to introduce Yolanda, another one of our members here, and she handles our refreshments for us. So thank you very much. Sorry I overlooked you. Did I overlook somebody else that I need to? No, okay. So one of our goals this year is to write monthly articles that will be published on Round the Rock Facebook page, and we will also be publishing those on one of our Facebook pages, which is Round Rock Preservation. So if you are a Facebook user, if you will go to both of those sites, if you're not already following Round the Rock, that's a good one to follow. Lots of information about Round Rock on that one. And then Round Rock Preservation, we have a couple of Facebook pages. The Stagecoach Inn, the Round Rock Stagecoach Inn is one of them, and the other one is Round Rock Preservation. We will be posting a good bit of history on that second one. if you have followed the Stagecoach Inn Facebook page, that's where we have put updates on the Stagecoach Inn, the preservation, the restoration of it, the moving. I don't have those in the correct order, but that's where the information has been on the Stagecoach Inn. And that event to rededicate the Stagecoach Inn happened October the 19th. It was an extremely successful event. We had over 250 attendees that morning, and it was wonderful to be able to get inside. And the mayor spoke, and when he did, he made a public commitment that the city of Round Rock would continue to support historic preservation in Round Rock. So that was a wonderful comment for him to make in a public forum like that. Again, welcome and thank you for being here. We enjoyed putting on these programs. If you have ideas for a history program, let one of our board members know and we will get that in the works for you. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about Elroy. Who already knows Elroy Everly? Okay, that's a good show of hands. Elroy and his wife moved to Round Rock in 1989. He is a retired Lutheran pastor, pastored congregations across the state, and then wound up here and was the pastor at Palm Valley Lutheran Church for a little more, right at 20 years, I believe. And once he received his BA from the Texas Lutheran University in Seguin and his Master of Divinity from a Luther seminary in Minnesota. And after retirement, he has spent his time researching history of our area. He has written 3 books with regard to that history, and I have read 2 of them. I still need to read the one about the minister. And the most recent one that he has written is about Kenney's Fort. We worked in collaboration with him, our organization did, to develop a marker at the actual site of Kenney's Fort, and he'll tell you more about that, but we dedicated that marker in June of 2024. It was several years in the making to get that marker accomplished, and lots of collaboration with the HOA for that neighborhood. It's right in the middle of their neighborhood, in their by their swimming pool at the amenity center there. So this book centers around Dr. Thomas Kenney, who settled the Kenney's Fort, and then stories about Kenney's Fort and Dr. Kenney and the pioneers that settled the first Anglo settlement. Kenney's Fort was the first Anglo settlement in Williamson County, before we were Williamson County, I believe. So join me in welcoming Elroy Haverly, who's going to talk to us about Kenney's Fort. So our young students in the back, can you see and can you hear okay? This is really exciting history. You're good? Okay.
Thank you.
I will. That's okay.
Thank you, Judy. Ooh. She said I was soft-spoken, so I need to be very quiet. Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you all for showing up. I told my wife when I left home, oh, the weather's going to keep people home. It's too wet, it's too cold, and we'll get, maybe a half dozen people. And look at you, you filled the whole room. I'm so impressed. You must have a great reputation. So thank you all for coming out today. This is just very impressive. Okay, I don't want to take up all my time in doing that, but I just want to express my thanks to you for coming out, and to Judy and everybody else on the Round Rock Preservation Board for all the work that they do. I've been exposed to them for a few years now, and it's very impressive to see their commitment and faithful work in preserving the history of Round Rock and Williamson County. When I did some research in this area, I contacted them quite a bit and got a lot of information. Also the Williamson County Museum in Georgetown, and went through a whole raft of old newspapers and kept the library folks busy looking up things. Because you know, I suppose some of you are retired now, you look for things to do in retirement, and so this has given me a lot of excuse to do some research in working on these books. So that's enough of an introduction. Let's get down to it here. Unfortunately, when I got all excited about coming over here, I left all my notes at home. So this may be a lot shorter than I thought it would be. But I wanted to start out with the, like the newspaper people do, the who, what, why, when, and where, okay? So first of all, who? Kenney's Fort was built by a fellow by the name of
Kenney.
There you go, Kenney, hence the name, Kenney's Fort. Although when I did some research, I came across 3 different ways of expressing that. It's either Kenney's Fort, or some said Kenney Fort, you may have seen that, or Fort Kenney, even. So any of those will work. I chose to use this one because it just made sense to me. So Kenney's Fort, built by a fellow by the name of Dr. Thomas Kenney. He was actually a doctor, a medical doctor, who lived in the lower Mississippi Valley, in Wisconsin and Iowa and Illinois. He was a successful young doctor, married to a lady by the name of Mary Jane. They called her marijuana, they called her Polly for some reason. I don't get the connection, but anyhow, that was her name. And they had a little daughter by the name of, guess what, Mary Jane. So anyway, they're having a fine life up there in Rock Island, Illinois, right on the Mississippi River, on the border with Iowa. Had a successful business there. And I'll talk more about him later, but just enough to let you know that that's where he came from. And for reasons that we'll be discussing later, he decided to leave that area and come to Texas. Okay? Now I remember another one of my notes. I was going to begin by asking you to imagine standing on top of the Round Rock. You know where the Round Rock is, right there in the Brushy Creek? Standing there in about the year 1837. Okay? If you look around, and to close your eyes to imagine this, there's no interstate highway going above you. Okay? No noise or truck noise or car noise. Everything is quiet. There's no building around. There's not even the what's the name of that restaurant again?
Which one? Which one?
You know, the one that you preserved.
Stage.
Stagecoach Inn. There's no. See, that's why I need notes. There's no Stagecoach Inn. There's not a Round Rock town. Okay, there are no houses. There's no Williamson County. There's no Austin, Texas. There's no Texas. Yeah, well, just barely. Okay, 1837. There is a Republic of Texas. What year did Texas become a republic? 1836. So yeah, so there is a republic, but no towns around. So there you are in the middle of nowhere at the Round Rock. Oh, you might see some buffalo around, heading here and yon. Hundreds of buffaloes. If you go a little bit farther north and west, you'll see thousands, millions of buffaloes. They're just all over the place. And where there are buffalo, there are also the Indians. Okay? Dr. Thomas was friendly with a tribe called the Tonkawa Indians. Some of you have heard of the Tonkawa neighborhood around here, okay? Tonkawa Indians who've lived in this area. They are some of their blood kin for about 8,000 years. So that's why we call them natives. Okay? They've been here forever, before Jesus was born, all right? Before King Solomon was around, before Moses, all right? Before the pyramids, there were the Indians of Texas. They were here for a long time. This was their home. So as you're standing there on the rock, you might see an Indian around somewhere, or you might see some buffaloes. You might see some bears around here. You might see some alligators. You might see all sorts of animals, deer. Okay. This is the area that Dr. Thomas Kenney decided to settle. On the frontier of nowhere. Not only that, but he brought his wife with him, okay, and their little girl. They actually moved here a few years before that and settled in Bastrop on the Colorado River. Had a couple more girls there. So now he's got his wife and 3 girls and himself. And he says, let's go out to the middle of nowhere and build a fort. There's no HEB out there. There's no doctors. There's nobody. There's no neighbors. Would any of you volunteer to go? A show of hands. Well,
Not this year.
Okay. I don't think I would. Dr. Kenney had a brother, and he was a Methodist minister. He was actually here before Dr. Kenney was. Methodist minister, so he was in Central Texas. Anyway, that's the who, the what. Kenney's fort was a fort. It's not a military fort. It was simply 4 log cabins surrounded by a picket fence to protect them from the wild animals and the natives in the area. Okay. And he came there because he wanted to settle this frontier, this new land. I guess he got tired of civilization, but he wanted to be among the first out here, and so he was. The first settlement, Anglo settlement, in Williamson County, before there was a Williamson County. Okay, so let's advance to see what is next. Oh yeah, how many of you have seen this before? How many of you have ever been driving on Highway 79? You drive right past it, okay? It's a Texas road marker. And forever, I saw that, and it says, first settlement in Williamson County, erected as a home by Dr. Thomas Kenney and Joseph Barnhart in the spring of 1839, served as a place of defense during Indian raids, rendezvous of the Santa Fe expedition, 1841. Here the archives of the Republic of Texas en route to Washington on the Brazos were captured on December 31st, 1842, and returned to Austin. I saw that many times, and I wondered, where's the beef? I mean, where's the fort? Okay, next, please. Oh yeah, this shows you a sampling of some of the tribes in Texas at that time. Tonkawas are right in the middle there. And they were always kind of trying to get somebody else's territory. These are called Plains Indians because, as opposed to the Indians who lived east of the Mississippi River, the Woods Indians, the Plains Indians relied upon horses. And it was the Comanches who were the masters of horseback riding. Their children, if you guys here were in Comanche with the Comanche Indians, you could ride a horse by now. Have any of you ever ridden a horse before? Oh, yeah. If you were a Comanche, you could ride it without a saddle, and you could ride at top speed, and you could reach down and grab a hat without even slowing down. How would you like to do that? Well, maybe boys, but more than girls. Anyway, yeah, they were the masters of the horses. And so they came in from the upper plains and came down south and overtook a lot of the other Indian tribes, such as the Apaches. And they lived in this area too. They didn't stay in one place very long. They followed the buffalo herds, okay, as did the Tonkawas as well. So anyway, yeah, this area was populated by lots of different Indian tribes. And then, right beside that monument that you saw a while ago, is this one, double file trail. Double file trail. I'm not going to read that whole thing there. You can while I'm talking. It was built by the Delaware Indians who came from, I think it was a place called Delaware. Anyway, from eastern United States, eastern Texas, and they were kind of kicked out of those areas and moved down into Mexico and followed this trail, double file trail. The reason I bring it up is because Kenney's Fort was built at an intersection, the intersection of Brushy Creek and Double File Trail. Okay, next please. There it is. Okay, this big red mark here, this is Interstate 35. That other red marker is Highway 79. And the green dots there, that's Double File Trail, if you're ever wondering where it went. It comes down from South Williamson County and goes up into east of Georgetown. No, it's west. East. Okay. Mankin Crossing, you ever heard of Mankin Crossing? Jonah, okay, up in that area. And then goes up near Bartlett. That's Double File Trail. Okay. Okay, here's those two markers that I mentioned a while ago. And there's a railroad track next to it. And Kenney's Fort, it says on there, is located a half mile on the other side of the railroad track, whatever direction that is.
South.
South. Thank you. Okay. Next, please. So, I got to wondering, I wonder what's there. So by this time I was retired and didn't have to worry about writing sermons, so I had time to kind of explore. So I parked my car on the side of the road and started walking. And went over a few bar fences and through some weeds and Johnson grass and I'm going to tell you what all else. I'm not sure whose property I was trespassing on. But anyway, it was a big meadow, and there in the distance, under that arrow, you see that little speck? Well, I figured that's got to be something, so I started walking over that way. Next. Oh, it was a flag. Yes, a flag. Well, that should be significant. It was actually a metal flag, and so that's where I started walking. Yeah, a lot of respect. Metal flag used as, I guess, target practice for the folks around there, in that area. So that's all there was of the fort. Shot up metal flag. So I looked around on the bottom, and lo and behold, there was something there behind the weeds. So I started clearing it away with my feet, and then realized, oh, it's a granite marker. How about that? Wonder what it says. Nothing. The bronze plaque had been unceremoniously swiped or removed, or maybe it just fell off. But anyway, that didn't help any, so that's when I started doing some more research into wondering what was the original wording on this plaque. And it was about that time that I thought, I need some help here. So I contacted various organizations, including yours, Reverend Preservation. He said, you know, this was the first settlement in Williamson County. That's rather significant. Nobody else can make that claim. Don't you think we should do something about that and alert people as to what Kenney's Fort is? It's kind of like, you know, San Antonio has the Alamo, right? Round Rock has Kenney's Fort. Yeah. We don't want to be known just by Sam Bass, the outlaw, killer. We want to be known by something a little better than that. About this time, COVID-19 strikes, okay? And so our activities sort of took a nosedive. And I kind of handed over the research to the Round Rock Preservation and Larry over, Frank over here, and told them, you know, here's what I found out, and here's the original wording. Maybe we can do something about it. And so they did. Next. Okay, never mind. The original wording says something like, it's in the book. This is the first Anglo settlement in Williamson County, and this monument was erected by the school children in Williamson County. So that settles that. By the way, I meant to ask you, please feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask questions, okay? I love your questions. So, next. Oh, stop. This is the family, okay? It was what I mentioned a while ago, Dr. Kenney and his wife, Mary Ann, and the three girls, Mary Ann, Mary Jane, Clarissa, and Anna. Okay, three girls. Okay, now. I came across 3 different sketches of Kenney's Fort. So obviously nobody knows exactly what it looks like or exactly where it was located. We have a pretty good idea of where it was, and we have a pretty good idea of what it looked like. It consisted of these 4 cabins, log cabins, and the stockade surrounding them for protection, and had portholes in the fence so that you could poke your guns out there and shoot at whatever you wanted to shoot at. Okay, this is a little misleading because it shows the river there at the same level as the fort, but actually, if you've ever been out to that area, Kenney's Fort was built up on top of a kind of like a plateau, and then you've got this steep cliff that goes down to Brushy Creek. Okay, next please. Yeah. So this is their washing machine and dryer. If you live in those days, this is how you would do your wash, if you ever washed at all. Okay. And oh yeah, one of the things that Kenney's Fort is known for is a starting place for what's called the Santa Fe Expedition. President Lamar said we need to send an expedition up to New Mexico to establish a trade route there. This was part of Mexico at that time, and so they said, let's get a bunch of people together, and so they did. A bunch of wagons and men and boys and horses and oxen, and so they took off. It was called a folly by a lot of people, and in fact, half the people that started out died on the way because of lack of supplies and Indian raids and such. And when they finally arrived in Santa Fe, they were all arrested by the Mexican government and detained there in Santa Fe. And some wanted to just go ahead and shoot them down. And others said, no, let's just take them down to prison. So the closest prison was in Mexico City, which was about 1,500 miles away. So they started the march down from Santa Fe all the way through the desert and wilderness of West Texas and into northern Mexico, and finally down into Mexico City. And a good many of them died on the way. So they finally got to Mexico City and then thrown into prison there, and then another prison, and finally they were released and made their way back to Texas with just a handful of survivors left. So it was not a very successful expedition. But it started at Kenney's Fort. That was the best part of the whole deal. Okay, next, please. Oh yeah, there they are. President Mirabeau Bonaparte Lamar. All right, I think that's enough. And there it shows you the route they took up to Santa Fe and then back down to Mexico City. And then, yeah, okay, next. One of the capitals of Texas was at San Felipe, and this was our first capital. Okay, next. Here it shows you all the capitals. Yeah. The one we're going to be talking about is down here toward the bottom: Waterloo, Austin, Houston, and Austin. Okay. This is the first one built in Austin, first capital of Texas, in Austin, 1839. It was about the same time that Kenney's fort was very active. Okay. Oh yeah, talk about active. The Archives War in 1844. Is that right? Okay. Anyway, Archives War is when President Houston was the first president, followed by Lamar, followed by Houston again. Okay. And in Houston's second term, he said, we need to move the capital from Austin. It was in Austin then. We need to move it away from there because it's on the edge of the frontier, and there's dangers from the Indians and dangers from the Mexican army. And so he said, I'm going to send a bunch of my men into Austin. He really didn't have the legal right to do that. It might be somebody else. But anyway, he said, forget the legalities. I'm sending my men down there to Austin, and they're going to take charge of the archives, which is the records of property owners and a bunch of important legal papers, and we're going to bring them back to Houston, the city that was named after me, he said. Okay. Well, so on December 31st, there were like 2 or 3 wagon loads of soldiers, and they came to Austin, and they stormed into the Capitol and grabbed all the archives, loaded them onto the wagons, and skedaddled out of town. But before they left, this lady, Angelina Eberly, said, hold on. You know, like Marshall Dillon says in Gunsmoke, hold it. She said, hold it. And to get people's attention, she lit this cannon and boom. And people said, what's going on? She said, they're stealing our government papers. After them. So by then, the wagons were just about at Kenney's fort, which was north of town. And the guys there in the wagons knocked on the gate and said, Dr. Kenney, let us in. And he said, not with the hair of my chin. No. He said, all right, come on in. So they came in, and when they were settled, lo and behold, this militia from Austin arrived on the outskirts of Kenney's fort, and it was a cold, blue norther that had blown in that same day. And so they were just freezing out there. Dr. Kenney said, who are these people out here? And he went out to talk to them and gave them some wood to build some fires. And so he got their story, he got the story from the militia, he got the story from the soldiers from Sam Houston. And the next day they worked it out. Of course, it helped the militia to have a cannon aimed straight at the wagons. So they said, okay, we'll give them back to you. So the papers were returned to Austin. Austin remained the capital of Texas and lived there happily ever after. The only war where no one was shot, which is a good thing, a bloodless war. Yes, sir?
Where is this display at?
Downtown Austin.
Congress.
Downtown Austin. Anybody know specifically where it is?
It's 8th and Congress, it's right diagonal from Paramount Theater.
Did you hear what she said?
The big bank building.
Yeah, It's right across, it's diagonal from the Paramount Theater
Ah,
at 8th Street.
okay.
It's at the, what used to be First Texas Bank or whatever. First
Wow,
American
okay.
Bank.
So if you know where the Paramount Theater is, it's close to that.
It's on the west side of Congress.
West side of Congress. Okay, okay.
Between 7 and 8.
Okay, let's go next. Owners of the fort. Oh yeah, Thomas Kenney owned it first, of course. He died. His daughter, Mary Jane, was raised for a couple of years in Austin, and then she returned. She got married by a fellow by the name of Lee, and they moved back to the fort. So she and her husband lived there for a while. Meanwhile, a fellow from Sweden by the name of S.M. Swenson was buying up hundreds and thousands of acres of land in Travis County, Williams County, North Texas, all over the place. And he said, you know, I want my sister to come join me here in Texas. Her name was Anna Christina Swenson. So she did. She moved over here. She moved, first of all, to a plantation in East Texas and married a fellow by the name of Dyer, D-Y-E-R. Okay. And they got married and moved. And by that time, S.M. Swenson said, hey, I got a present for you. 400 acres of land, and there's a fort that sits in the middle of it. So he gave her 400 acres of land, so Mary Jane had sold it to S.M. Swenson, so S.M. Swenson gave it to his sister and her husband, and they lived there for a number of years. Raised horses, built a nice two-story building, house, and became known as the Dyer Place. And there was a body of water named the Dyer Branch.
Were the Kenneys Swedish?
No. They were something else. They were, I don't know.
They were Irish.
Irish,
Yeah,
maybe.
they sounded like Irish.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on. Oh, this is the actual deed written by S.M. Swenson to his sister. Okay, next. And there he signs his name. Okay, next. And there's the Dyer Place. Okay, next.
It's not there anymore, right?
I'm sorry?
It's not there anymore.
No, it's not there anymore. Fort's not there, house isn't there, nothing's there. It's all covered with a housing development now.
So even that, you said you saw, you saw the flag, and the metal flag, and then you saw something.
Monument.
Are they there?
Actually, the flag is gone. Who knows where it is? The monument now sits in this, well, I'll show you right here. This was taken in the year 2014. And there's Highway 79 up there, Kenney Fort Boulevard, right there now. And this is that meadow where I was trespassing. And the monument was right about where that store is, okay?
So isn't that the walking trail there, that white line across there?
Yes.
Is that the walking trail?
Isn't it the what?
Walking trail.
Oh, yeah. Right, along Brushy Creek.
So do you
Next.
ever see that monument?
Next. That's the way it looks today. Within 5 years, that meadow had become a housing development. Okay, a Concord at Brushy Creek, it's called. So the monument was moved from its trashy location to the amenity center at this housing development. So it's right in front of the swimming pool. They moved it there, and for a while it had no face on it. So it was like, what is this? But thanks to the Round Preservation people, the monument has a face once again. So if you go out there, you'll see that the monument lives.
So where's the Chisholm Trail?
I'm sorry?
Where's the Chisholm Trail in all of that?
Chisholm Trail, the walking trail?
No, the old Chisholm Trail.
It's way down.
Well, to the,
How hard, right?
okay.
To the west.
So,
To the left.
Right.
No.
No.
Bless your heart.
Whatever. And there's the, what's that place up there called? Kalahari. Yeah.
That's there, that's up there. It's Kalahari.
Kalahari, north. I mean,
Do you know where the train bridge that used to go across right before you got to
Yeah.
Palm Valley?
I can't reach up that high.
They took that out.
There's right above here, see that line of trees? That was one of the railroads that went from up north, and then it goes down through here. Yeah, it's not there anymore,
No.
just trees.
You can find it on Google Maps.
That's what this is. Yeah.
You get closer, the
Okay,
text box.
let's go. Well, there was another question, wasn't there? Oh, okay, next. Oh, there it is. That's what monument is today, right?
Did they ever discover what was written on the original plaque?
The original plaque, the wording on the original plaque. You gotta buy my book. Yeah, it says something like Kenney's Fort, built in whatever, first white settlement in
Sign of
Williamson County.
Kenney's Fort, first settlement in Williamson County, erected by school children of Williamson County. Downward.
That's it.
That's it.
Thanks. Okay, that's it. Now, we're not done though. More questions. Okay, we've done the who, what, who, what, who,
Why?
where, why, we need the why. Why did he move from a comfortable place up in Rock Island, Illinois, to the middle of nowhere?
Malpractice?
Could be. Yeah. He had a successful profession there and family. Why would he leave?
His
One
wife
reason was that his wife had what they called consumption in those days. Today we call it tuberculosis. And they figured that if she could move to a warmer, drier climate, that would help her. That was one reason. The second reason, his brother lived in Texas at that time. I already mentioned him, the Methodist ministry. And he was saying, oh, it's beautiful here. It's a wonderful place to live. And the third reason is probably a little less obvious. He just was not satisfied being a doctor anymore. He wanted to do something more with his life. He wanted to be a part of the movement into the new land. Where there's no close neighbors around. Okay, it was just too crowded up there in Rock Island, Illinois. So he certainly accomplished that. He moved to an area that was brand new, and a man could just do whatever he could, want to accomplish if he had the wherewithal to do it. The book is kind of a tragedy, just like real life is. They didn't live there happily ever after. Okay, and you may never read the book, so I'll just tell you what happened. You can read this in history books anyway. Polly died there at the fort from tuberculosis, and she was buried across the, there's a branch there called Dyer Branch, D-Y-E-R, buried on the other bank. And on a sad occasion, he had 3 girls at home. And one of the problems was, what am I going to do with these 3 girls? In those days, they would often farm out the children to somebody else. And so this is what he did. And a few years after that, he was going to take his 2 older daughters to a place called Ruddersville. Heard of Ruddersville? They were starting a new school there. It's close to the Grange, started by the Methodist Church. So he got the wagons all loaded, his wagon all loaded. But the night before, a fellow by the name of Captain Nelson Merrill said, oh man, A couple other guys and I shot a bunch of buffalo, a whole bunch. We have these hides up near Salado, and the weather's beginning to warm up. We really need to get those hides before they rot. So Dr. Kenney said, okay, you can use my wagon, I'll unload it, and in fact, I'll go with you. The next day, they went up and found the buffalo hides and were attacked by the Indians, and he was killed. Captain Merrill escaped, came back to the fort. The next morning, he and a few others went up there to find the bodies, and they found them. The ground was too hard; it was frozen, so they couldn't bury them in the ground. They laid them out and covered them with large stones, and that area today is known as Bone Hollow. Bone Hollow? Yeah, Bone Hollow. Somewhere around the Salado area. So the story ends there. Although Mary Jane picks it up, and she continues to run the fort as a place where settlers could come and sort of get a foothold before they built their own homes. Have you ever heard of where's my notes? Hang on, I wrote it down a while ago. Oh yeah, Rice's Crossing?
Yes.
Rice's Crossing, you know where it is?
Yes.
But you don't. It used to be close to Brushy Creek, south of Taylor and Hutto. It's been moved. It's not there anymore. I went to go see it one time. It's like, where is this store? It's been moved up to Old Settlers Park. How about that? So anyway, it was built by a fellow by the name of Rice. Rice's Crossing, James Rice, a Texas Ranger, used to live at Kenney's Fort. You ever hear of Jacob Harrell? Jacob Harrell was first person to live in a place he named Waterloo, which was like on Shoal Creek and the Colorado River. He hosted a fellow there by the name once of Marabou Lamar, and Lamar liked it so much he said, "Man, if I ever get to be president, I'm gonna move the capital here." And so he did. That was Jacob Harrell. Jacob Harrell became mayor of Austin later, and eventually moved back to the Round Rock area. He planted a whole bunch of corn crops right there at Kenney's Fort. Have you ever heard of Sirloin Stockade? Okay, if just on the 35, Interstate 35, and there's a cemetery on the eastern edge of the parking lot. It's a big, huge, majestic oak tree, and under the oak tree is this little cemetery, and Jacob Harrell is buried there. So you can go find it for yourself sometime. Of course, Nelson Merrill, you've heard of Merrilltown. Okay, and he was instrumental in a lot of things around here. And he built a house just on the north side of Highway 79. You've probably driven past it many times. A big two-story house with a round cupola on top with windows where he could watch out for the Indians or his slaves. But yeah, that house still stands there. Captain Nelson Merrill. He lived at the fort for a while. I'm just giving you these as an example of the fact that Kenney's Fort served a purpose, harboring early settlers so that they could have a safe place to live and venture out from there and build their own new settlements. Do you have a question?
So there were like 4 cabins, other people lived in those people lived in those other cabins?
Yeah, 4 cabins. So sometimes it was really crowded, and other times it was not. Any other questions?
Is Holly's gravesite still there?
I'm sorry, what?
Holly's gravesite, or their monument or anything?
Who knows where it is? You know, like the fort itself, her gravesite is buried. I mean, archaeologists could probably come out here and locate it, but you know, It's not covered by houses anymore, ever. But it's probably just overgrown with weeds and such. Any other questions? Okay. If not, I'll leave you with one final thought, and that is that Captain Merrill was also a man of peace, and he wanted to live peacefully with the Indians. And so he established some close ties with the Tonkawa tribe, and they came and visited with him at the fort many times and exchanged gifts. If we were living at that time, what would you do with the Indians? That was a big question at that time. Lamar's answer was either ship them out or exterminate them. Houston's answer was, let's get along somehow. Well, Tonka was wound up in Oklahoma, poverty-ridden and just devastated. So Thomas Kenney tried to live peacefully with them. The irony is, he was killed by the Indians. So we always face difficult decisions on how to get along with folks. So, one more question.
Tell us about your books.
My book? Well, it's about Kenney's Fort. No, seriously. Yeah, I just kind of gave you the broad outlines here today, but the book covers a lot of the personalities. Kenney himself and his wife, his daughter, the other people who were living there, the interaction. Chief Campos, I found his picture, by the way, one time. He's a real person. So the book gets into more of the personalities of the people and the events as well. Yeah. And
Were there any diaries or journals or anything?
yes, there was a diary written by, guess who? Mary Jane, the daughter herself. In her old age, she dictated it to her daughter. Okay? And I have a copy of that diary. I forgot it, but it's at home. But she gives a lot of interesting tidbits about it, and I try to include some of those in the book. You know. And another question.
Well, they were talking about the 4 houses who lived there. That was a time of slavery, so what's the talk of the helpers at that time, the slaves?
Yeah, in the research that I did not find reference to the fort being built by slaves. It may have been, but it wasn't mentioned. By the way,
I mean, you see, you had one man and the daughters and the wife. In other words, there had to be
he had a lot of,
farmhands of some sort, no?
he had a lot of helpers, a lot of men who lived at that fort with him. Yeah. And by the way, the size of the fort was about 1/2 acre, which is like 150 feet on each side. So can you imagine building a trench to put all these picket boards in? Yeah. Good question. I'm sorry to take some extra
Okay,
time.
thank you all for all your good questions. I don't want us to run over in case you have to leave and be someplace at 1. Very good. So we have a certificate to give to Elroy, thanking him for being here today. Elroy Haverley is recognized for his contributions as an author, historian, and Lutheran pastor. His service and contributions have enriched the lives of many Round Rock citizens. As an historian, he has discovered important stories of the individuals who have come before us and settled Round Rock. His recordings of these historic stories will educate and entertain readers for generations to come. Round Rock Preservation and the City of Round Rock Historic Preservation Office thank Elroy for presenting the story of Dr. Thomas Kenney and Kenney's Fort impact on Williamson County at our February 11, 2025 Discovering Round Rock History program. We thank you. Thank you.
By the way, if anyone wants a copy of the book, I have some up here, so you can buy them. And there's some other books here too that you can look at and browse around. If I sell out today, or if you just don't have time, you can always just go to Amazon.com and just Google in either my name or the name of the book, and you should be able to get it that way. And there are copies in the public library too. Thank you all again so much.
Next on our agenda